love that never healed. The coffee shop on Morrison Street still smelled the same. Burnt espresso and cinnamon, with that underlying mustiness of old books from the used bookstore next door. Sarah hadn't been back in 7 years, but her feet had carried her here anyway, as if they remembered something her mind had tried to forget. She ordered her usual, black coffee, no sugar. The barista was new, some kid with bleached hair and too many ear piercings, nothing like the elderly woman who used to work mornings and knew everyone's order by heart. Sarah took her cup to the corner table by the window, the one with the wobbly leg that she and Marcus used to stabilize with folded napkins. The napkins were still there. Her hand trembled as she sat down, and coffee sloshed over the rim, burning her thumb. She didn't flinch. The pain felt appropriate somehow, like penance for returning to a place she'd sworn she'd never see again. Marcus had proposed to her here. Not at this table. That came later, became their table after the proposal. He'd done it by the counter, dropped to one knee right in the middle of the morning rush, his hands shaking so badly the ring nearly fell from the box. Everyone had applauded. The elderly barista had given them free pastries for a week. Sarah had said yes without hesitation. Of course she had. Marcus was everything. Brilliant and kind, funny in that self-deprecating way that made you want to protect him and laugh with him all at once. He saw her, really saw her, in a way no one else ever had. He knew she took her coffee black because her grandmother had, that she hummed when she was nervous, that she dreamed of opening her own architecture firm but was terrified of failing. They'd planned everything, a small wedding in autumn, a honeymoon in Portugal. Children, eventually, 2, maybe 3. A house with a garden where Marcus could grow his tomatoes and she could design the perfect studio space. The accident happened 4 months before the wedding. Sarah's phone had rung at 2:47 a.m. She still remembered the exact time because she'd looked at the clock, annoyed, thinking it was a wrong number. But it was Marcus's mother, her voice so fractured and strange that Sarah hadn't recognized it at first. Drunk driver. Head-on collision. Marcus had been coming home from his bachelor party, sitting in the passenger seat of his best friend's car. The friend had walked away with bruises. Marcus hadn't walked away at all. He'd survived. That was the word everyone used, as if survival were binary, as if being alive were enough. But the traumatic brain injury had stolen something essential. He woke up 3 weeks later and didn't know who Sarah was. Didn't recognize his own mother for the first 2 days. His memories were Swiss cheese, full of holes that would never be filled. The doctor said he might recover some memories. They used words like possibly and in time and we can't be certain. Sarah had clung to those words like a drowning woman to driftwood. She'd visited every day, brought photos, played their favorite songs, told him stories about their relationship. Sometimes he'd smile, polite and distant, the way you might smile at a stranger telling you about their day. Other times he'd grow frustrated, upset that this woman kept insisting they were in love when he felt nothing, remembered nothing. "I'm sorry," he'd said once, 6 months after the accident. They were in his parents' living room, where he was relearning how to live. "I know you must have been important to me. Everyone says we were happy, but I can't feel it. When I look at you, there's just nothing." Nothing. The word had cut deeper than any scalpel. His neurologist had explained it gently, clinically. The injury had damaged the parts of his brain that stored emotional memories, particularly those tied to relationships. Marcus could remember facts, where he went to college, his favorite foods, but the feelings attached to Sarah, to their love, were gone. Not buried, not waiting to resurface. Just gone, as thoroughly as if they'd been surgically removed. Sarah had tried to stay. God, she'd tried. She'd told herself that they could start over, that love could be rebuilt. But Marcus hadn't wanted to rebuild. He was polite but firm. He needed to focus on his recovery, he said. He needed to figure out who he was now, not who everyone told him he'd been. Having her there, desperately trying to resurrect a relationship he couldn't remember, was making everything harder. So she'd left, moved to a different city, threw herself into work, built the architecture firm she'd always dreamed of. She dated other people, even had one relationship that lasted almost 2 years. She was successful and busy and, by most measures, fine. But she'd never put the ring away. It sat in her jewelry box, untouched, a tiny circle of gold that represented a future that had died without ever properly ending. Sarah's coffee had gone cold. Outside the window, the city moved on with its life, indifferent to heartbreak and memory. She pulled out her phone, scrolled to the news alert that had brought her back to this city, to this coffee shop. Marcus had gotten married last month. She'd seen the announcement, had tortured herself by looking at the photos. He looked happy, genuinely happy, with a woman who knew only this version of him, the after version, not the before. A woman who didn't carry the ghost of who he used to be. Sarah felt the tears coming and didn't fight them. Here, in this place where he'd once promised her forever, she let herself grieve for the love that had ended without closure, for the man who had disappeared while his body lived on, for the version of herself who'd believed that love was enough to overcome anything. Some wounds, she understood now, don't heal. They just become part of you, a permanent ache you learn to carry. She finished her cold coffee, left the wobbling table, and walked back out into the world, still broken, still carrying her unloved life like a stone in her chest. But at least now she'd said goodbye.